Welcome into the Boys Collective episode 33 right here on 105.3 The Fan on YouTube. My name is Kevin Gray, alongside Super Bowl winning scout at 1/4 of the G-Bag Nation, Bryan Broaddus, on this Victory Monday after arguably the most dominant victory for the Dallas Cowboys this season, a 56-14 beatdown of the Washington football team on Sunday Night Football. Happy Victory Monday, Bryan. How are you?
Thank you very much, KG, as you as well. That was quite impressive. And what's even more impressive about it is, you go out and you try and win a football game, and they had clinched the division, but you go out and make a statement like that, like, listen, we don't need your help, the Raiders. We don't need your help, whoever. And it was, to go out there and what we call the old hat and T-shirt game, they went and got the hat and T-shirt. And, and it really was on all phases of the football game. And I think that's the most satisfying thing about it when you sit down and watch it from a coaching aspect of that. There's so many things that went right in that football game. And that just kind of shows you what your team's capable of doing every week. Not that you're going to score 50-something points every week, but you're capable of putting up numbers like that. And then you're also capable of playing defense and playing special teams as well.
You can find Bryan on Twitter at Bryan Broaddus. You can find me on Twitter at Kevin Gray Sports. Make sure you subscribe to 105 through the Fan here on YouTube and also on all of our social media platforms at Twitter, Facebook, and Instagram, and of course at 105.3thefan.com. As Bryan mentioned, a complete effort for this Dallas Cowboys football team. They had already clinched the division by the time they stepped onto the field on Sunday night by virtue of the Atlanta Falcons and the Las Vegas Raiders winning their ball games, allowing the Dallas Cowboys to clinch the NFC East. They win the NFC East now for the fourth time in 8 seasons and the first time since 2018. So the Dallas Cowboys were able to be a little bit more comfortable once they walked onto the field on Sunday night in AT&T Stadium, and it showed as we jump into our Cowboys Washington football team game recap. A lot of history made for a Cowboys football team that scored in all 3 phases as far as offense, defense, and special teams. Dak Prescott was absolutely spectacular. 27 of 35 in the first half, 320 yards, 4 touchdowns. Amari Cooper got into the act. DeMarcus Lawrence got into the act. Before we get specifically into the offense and defense, what did you think about the mentality that the Cowboys came out with in this game in all 3 phases of the game? And it seemed like a very aggressive football team that, as you mentioned, wanted to make a statement on Sunday Night Football in front of a national audience.
Yeah, I was a little disappointed, KG, that the football team deferred to the second half, which gave you the ball. And I kind of felt like that Dallas was going to come out and they were going to attack from the word go and try and make that a 7-0 game quick and then make the football team have to play defense. And we, in the pregame show yesterday, we had a chance to interview Julie Donaldson, who is works with the play-by-play with the football team. And I asked her the question about what happened 2 weeks ago, fresh in their mind. And she said, yes, absolutely. It's something that, what happened, 2 weeks ago could have been a 35-6 game very easily, the way that the defense played. Offense didn't get things rolling. But the fact that the Dallas Cowboys didn't score on the opening drive, and then they had the weird kind of funky play where they tried to throw the ball back and it ended up being a -1. And you're like, okay, what are we doing? What's going on here? But then football team comes back and they're like, we're going to challenge Diggs on this route. And McLaurin never had a chance. I mean, if you watch the route the way it was run from the end zone, Diggs was in perfect position to catch that ball. And so once he got that interception, I kind of felt like, okay, here we go. This is where it's going to start. And I know that was very, very early in the game, but then you started to see the Cowboys, it's like it kind of woke the offense up a little bit. Even though they'd had 1 series, it was like, okay, defense is coming to play again here today. All week long, Amari Cooper, folks like that are talking about we need to do more to help the defense. Well, they did. They went to work immediately, trying to get that done. And from that point on, really, from that interception, it was, they just never looked comfortable. I mean, the football team never looked comfortable on offense. They really couldn't run the football. Taylor Heineke was throwing the ball sidearm. There was always somebody in his face. They tried screen plays. It didn't work. They couldn't get the ball down the field. So, yeah, the defense, once again, offense making football team very one-dimensional, and then the defense just going after Taylor Heineke, and to the point where they had to put Allen in at quarterback because it was so far out of reach.
Well, when the Washington football team, in terms of Jonathan Allen and Deron Payne, weren't fighting each other, they were very comfortable because they brought their own benches. I didn't know if you heard, but they had brought their own benches to AT&T Stadium, so I'm sure they were very comfortable in their heated seats inside of the climate-controlled
I learned this.
Stadium.
I learned this during the game. Those benches can also blow air conditioning, so it wasn't just you can make them heated or you can make them air conditioned. So. To your point, yeah, it really, really didn't matter where they were on that. I mean, it's a pretty bench though, with the logo on it and stuff like that. I give a lot of credit to the company that puts those out. It's a beautiful bench.
Well, the air conditioning could have been used for the hotheads of Deron Payne and Jonathan Allen. That's how dominant the Dallas Cowboys were in this particular game. Just a couple of numbers to kind of put in perspective some of the things that we saw before we jump specifically to the offense. Dak Prescott threw a touchdown to a running back, tight end, wide receiver, and an offensive lineman against Washington, the first quarterback in NFL history to accomplish the feat in a regular season game. You say, Kevin, well, who else did it? Kurt Warner did it in a playoff game. So those are the only two quarterbacks in NFL history to have done something of that nature. Trayvon Diggs on the other side, his 11th interception in the first quarter tied Everson Walls for the most interceptions in a single season in Cowboys history. Just a tip of the iceberg in terms of the numbers and some of the history that was made by the Cowboys in their dominant 42-point effort. Let's start on the offensive side. And I want to start, obviously, with Dak Prescott, because I think going into the weekend, we had talked about some of the things that Dak Prescott needed to do to try and get reacclimated, or as I say, more comfortable again in this offense. And he did a lot of those things, whether it be throwing on the run, making plays with his legs, extending drives by getting first downs. I thought he looked the most comfortable that I've seen him since before the calf injury, save for the Atlanta game, because he looked pretty good in the Atlanta game. And I'd say the fourth quarter against the Raiders. But for the completeness of his game, I thought this was by far the best game that Dak Prescott played this season, and he was able to dominate in the first half for the Cowboys.
Yeah, no, and KG, it might be as simple as Dak Prescott just playing at home. It seems like if you look at the numbers this year and how he's played, the Denver game was probably not a good example, but overall, Dak Prescott at home has been outstanding. And, it's where they've had some troubles with the offense has been kind of on the road. Now they've managed to win games on the road, even having trouble with their offense. But, Dak Prescott's just been incredible. I mean, you mentioned it last night, the accuracy, the ball placement, the ability to buy a second chance when he needed to. Probably took a couple of sacks he didn't need to. But, overall, though, you have to be pleased with the way that he threw the football, the way that he managed the game, not turning the ball over. These are all things that you kind of worry about, and we've seen from Dak Prescott, the last couple of weeks, and that just wasn't the case. And, again, if you go back and look at just the numbers of Dak at home, now you understand why it's important to try and fight for the first seed, or why it's important to try and fight for the second seed, because the Cowboys at home offensively are a different football team. They just are. And, and the numbers prove that. So to me is you get as many home games as you can. You got the Arizona one coming up. It's probably going to be a tough one in Philadelphia because they're fighting for a spot, but you get that first or second seed and assure yourself, the opportunity to play, 2 home games if you're the 1 seed. And then if you're the 2 seed, the opportunity to also play 2 games as well at home. That's huge just by looking at the way the Cowboys offensively have played.
Speaking of some of those numbers, our Dallas Cowboys insider Bobby Belt at Bobby Belt TX on Twitter, Dak Prescott's last 11 full games at home, 68.7 completion percentage, nearly 3,600 yards, averaging nearly 9 yards per attempt, averaging over 327 yards per game, 35 total touchdowns, 31 in the air, 4 on the ground, just 4 interceptions, and a passer rating of nearly 116. That just speaks to what you were talking about in terms of the dominance of him at home and why it's that important for this team in particular, it sounds like, to be at home in the playoffs if they're able to be that 1 or 2 seed, given the kind of advantage that the quarterback gives them by playing inside of AT&T Stadium.
It's really key. I mean, I appreciate Bobby put all those numbers out, and that really tells the story of a lot of times about this Cowboy offense and really what Dak Prescott, when he's on, you see it. It's beautiful to watch. I mean, sitting in the press box and watching routes develop and watch him manipulate the pocket and watch him hit guys on the go. And even that ball he threw a ball down the right sideline. I know you and I were talking about numbers and deep shots on the right side. They tried a couple of different times. It got Michael Gallup on one, but they tried on the with Amari Cooper, and that was a pretty well thrown ball. I kind of thought that Coop, probably not going to lay out that way for the ball, but to me, that was one of those ones you might have tried to lay out on, And so with all that being said, I just feel like though that, everybody wants home games. I mean, it's part of what you do, but man, this team is a different animal, especially at quarterback with that guy at home. So, if it means knocking the Eagles out and all that to get a 1 or 2 seed, by gosh, do everything in your power to make that happen. Because the more home games you have, again, I don't mean to be Captain Obvious, but again, those numbers show you why you need those home games.
If the playoffs were to start today, the Dallas Cowboys would be hosting a home playoff game against the Philadelphia Eagles if the season were to end today. Also, I thought the running game was very good in this game. While they didn't have the monster numbers that you have been accustomed to in the coming into this game, where the Cowboys had ran over 100 yards in the previous 3 games consecutively, they were able to do a lot of that again in this game. They ran for another 108 yards in this game. Ezekiel Elliott had 37 yards. Pollard had 34. Dak Prescott had 21 yards of his own, averaging over 5 yards a carry. This was a team that I thought effectively used the running game. And I want to get your evaluation now. Now that Connor Williams has been back into this lineup, what has been the biggest difference that you've seen? And I'll say this real quick too. My favorite touchdown of the game was watching the 11-yard TD run that Ezekiel Elliott had when you had your man Zach Martin and La'el Collins pulling out and getting out on the edge. I don't think there's anything more terrifying than watching those two get out on the edge and walking Ezekiel Elliott into the end zone the way that they did.
Yeah, there were several, the things you mentioned to me, the running aspect of it, I think it was good enough. Mm-hmm. But like we talked about, it is about getting the ball out on the edge. It is about getting the ball out in space. It is, there's always going to be a place for tough inside running. But you saw a great example of that last night. I mean, there were a couple of runs they had too where, Tyler Broaddus was out in front of a play and they were running the ball on the edge. And I just kind of feel like that they're a better team when they do the scheme where we talk about the pin and pull stuff, when they get guys, because Schultz is not going to dominate at the point of attack. He's going to get in the way. When you start talking about Steele or Ty Nsekhe, these guys, they're good players to a point. They just don't ask them to have to handle someone one-on-one and get movement as a drive blocker. That's just not their game. And to me, when you see the ball going to the edge and when you see blockers in front, it's a better way of running the football. And I'll tell you this though too, and Brad Sham brought up something really, really interesting, and he was talking to somebody about Dak Prescott playing underneath center. And we saw that more last night, is that with Dak Prescott playing under center, the threat of the run is there more. So that it opens up. I mean, the threat of run is not always there when you're in the shotgun, unless you're just doing RPO stuff all night. And, with Dak not running like, he did the last couple of years, the threat of the RPO is really not as prevalent. So putting him under center, allowing him to stretch the ball to the edge, blocks develop, they get guys on the outside, whether it's a little flip plays, handoffs, tosses, whatever they have to do. It's good to watch it work when you have those big guys that are athletes that are able to get out front and create the space for these backs.
Not only that, I noticed the tempo that they played with was much better, I thought, in the first half. And the play action was terrific. Dak Prescott was terrific out of play action. But again, to your point, the function of the run game getting going and allowing him to be comfortable in play action, I thought that balance that they struck was beautiful in this particular game. And I'm sure a lot of folks felt a little bit better about Kellen Moore after the game was over with, given how well his offense was able to execute on Sunday night. So the Cowboys offensively dominate the first half. Trayvon Diggs gets the interception. That leads to 21 unanswered points by the Cowboys, and they were off to the races from there. This is where we'll go to the defensive side before we get to our stars of the game. This defense, Bryan, continues to just take away the football. They continue to score, and they continue to prove, I'm sure, a lot of folks wrong about the idea that they just simply can't continue to do this. And yet they did. We mentioned Trayvon Diggs is 11th interception of the year. Then DeMarcus Lawrence gets into the act with one of the plays of the year, I think, for the Cowboys, with his 40-yard athletic interception, tips the ball to himself, tight ropes it down the sidelines, looking like a running back, nearly running 18 miles an hour. And next thing you know, the Cowboys have blown the doors wide open on this game. Can you talk about how well that DeMarcus Lawrence has come back in these games and what he's meant to this defensive line in the variety of ways that his game has been shown since he's come back?
Well, yeah, KG. I mean, you're looking at a guy that, as everybody knows, has missed the majority of the season, and now the last several games he's been back. That is a fresh body out there playing right now. That's a guy that's, the wear and tear of the season. You usually worry about that with Tank as the year goes on, because he was always a guy having to face double team blocks, sometimes triple team blocks. He was having to be the bell cow of the group. He was having to be the guy that was making tackles for loss, for sacks, anything to do with the defense. It was really on the shoulders of Tank Lawrence. And Tank was one of those guys that has, he just looks so fresh out there playing, and he's getting a lot more of single blocks and stuff because of how well Randy's playing, how well Oso Diggy-Zawa played last night, Neville Gallimore, Parsons. I mean, teams just can't focus everything on Lawrence, and he plays the run so well because he's long. He doesn't let you get on him body wise. He extends. He has a good vision to kind of hold the blocker in place, see where the ball's going. Or if you leave him unblocked, he could chase from the backside. That's a complete football player. I mean, as you said, that was one of the most athletic plays. But we've seen that 2 games against the football team. The Randy Gregory tip interception, huge athletic play. DeMarcus, for him to go up and, the quarterback's going to try. I mean, he goes vertical and, gets that ball. I mean, from my press box seat, I didn't know where the ball went. I was looking for a deflection or something like that. And then next, he's running down the sidelines. But that just shows you the type of player that he is. And I know there were a lot of people that were very critical of him because we focus on salary. We focus on $20 million here and $20 million here and $40 million here. And if that's how you want to just evaluate players, well, okay, that's how you evaluate players. But to me, it's not their fault they make that money. The organization pays them to make plays. And when they do make plays, I think you have to give them credit for how good they're playing.
In 4 games back, DeMarcus Lawrence has 11 tackles, 4 tackles for loss, 2 sacks, 6 quarterback hits, a forced fumble, an interception, and a touchdown, and was Pro Football Focus's highest graded defender for the Cowboys this past week in his 3rd game this season with a grade of at least 90. That's pretty good for DeMarcus Lawrence. And he's, you mentioned, the beneficiary of a lot of guys around him being able to help him be able to get free and do the kinds of things he's doing.
Yeah, and again, this goes back to Dan Quinn and these coaches putting these players in position to make plays. And I think that's really the thing. That might be the most underrated thing that Dan Quinn's doing right now, that he did not have any of his star players like with Lawrence or either with with Gallimore. Yesterday he's playing without his nickel corner, Jordan Lewis. What do? They kick Brown inside. They put Kelvin Joseph on the outside, his first NFL start. I mean, the kid played well. Look what happened. They haven't really had much of Maurice Canaday. I mean, he really doesn't practice or anything like that. And they get such a lead that they're able to throw guys out on the field, and it doesn't matter. I mean, they just go out there and play and get reps, and it all works out. So this is a very, very deep defensive team, and it's been deep really all year because Dan Quinn and the staff have taken guys and made, as we always talk about, he's made safeties linebackers, he's made linebackers defensive ends, he's made defensive ends defensive tackles. He's done everything he has to do in order to make this defense function the way it has.
And don't want to forget to mention some notes for Micah Parsons. Now has 13 sacks on the season. He is now just a sack and a half shy of tying the sacks record for a rookie in NFL history. Javon Curse holds that record with 14 and a half. Safe to say, I think that record might be falling here in the next couple of weeks, the way that Micah Parsons has played. Also, the Cowboys scored a touchdown on special teams. Corey Clement gets a block punt. Chauncey Goldston gets the easiest touchdown he'll ever have in his life with a perfect bounce to him.
Him and Nashawn Wright. Nashawn Wright scored a touchdown the easiest way you can score one, too. So they've had a couple of really easy special teams touchdowns.
Everything seemed to go right the way it felt, a lot like how the Falcons game went. Everything went right. Yeah. Perfect bounces going your way. And they were able to dominate from start to finish.
Yeah, and Kellen Moore was looking down at his call sheet, and every single one of those plays was blinking like, call me, call me, call me, call me. And I mean, anything he dialed up seemed to work yesterday for the Cowboys. And we kind of said, well, is Kellen Moore holding stuff back? And no, I think Kellen Moore and these guys I think the offense was just hadn't been as good as it needed to be. And Kellen Moore yesterday, when you throw a ball to an eligible tackle, when you try and throw the ball back across the field on a crossing route or, and I don't know if that was just a junk play or a real play, but, Kellen Moore's trying to win games and he's trying to figure out the offense the best he can. And, that I think that's kind of like you say, the good things that they were able to do. A lot of these things have happened at home. And I just think that as we get down to the end, that's really going to be the key for this football team. And hopefully it'll carry over to this Arizona game. I mean, you got to have this Arizona game. You got to have this Arizona game. You got to make sure that, again, it's about your positioning, but you got to also send a message. And I know Arizona's a little down right now. And I think a 50-point beatdown of football team is fine. You go out there and dominate a good Arizona team. Now you've got everybody's attention in this conference.
Mike McCarthy is now 42-18 in the month of December as the Cowboys remain undefeated in the month
What's
of December.
Aaron Rodgers' record in December? It's pretty good too, probably.
Yeah, I'm sure it's pretty similar to Mike McCarthy's record. Yeah. Touche, Brian. Touche.
It took some hits. That December record took some hits last year, I think, a little bit.
Yes, it did. It did. He's rebounded quite nicely with his quarterback that he currently has right now. That gets us to the stars of the game quickly before we get out of here for today. The star for me, I mean, to me, it can't be anyone other than Dak Prescott. I know DeMarcus Lawrence had the 40-yard interception, Trayvon Diggs interception number 11 on the year. I thought that Dak Prescott, for the first time in a long time, looked like the player that coming into the season and through the first 6 weeks of the year, we said, oh, this is the player that potentially could be an MVP this year. And the way that he did it, he had a couple of throws, one to CeeDee Lamb, one to Michael Gallup, on the run, making throws, as far as, the jump throws and all the things that we're accustomed to seeing from him. I thought Dak Prescott really reminded everyone, okay, this is the player that we thought coming into the season that we were going to see for the entirety of the season. And I think for him, it was a big confidence boost, or maybe it wasn't. Maybe he's been this confident this whole time and just said, hey, I'm just wasn't playing my best football. But now he was reminded of himself the way that he played against Washington on Sunday night.
Yeah, no, I think you're absolutely right. My star of the game, I'm going to go with our guy Diggs, and I'll tell you why. They've played the football team twice, and Terry McLaurin is a big time football player in my book. I don't think he gets nearly the credit he deserves.
Mm-hmm.
And if he had a better quarterback situation there, he would probably be a guy that we would talk about. But Diggs traveled with him yesterday, did a great job. That's 2 games. And, with Terry McLaurin, if you play Terry McLaurin in 2 games and he basically has 3 catches for 40 yards, somebody's playing really, really, really well. And I want to give Diggs a lot of credit, not only for the interception, the way he played the route, but again, 2 games against Terry McLaurin, he has completely, I know McLaurin got hurt in that game, the first time they played, but up until that point, he hadn't had any catches. And so yesterday, again, only 3 catches for 40 yards. I think that says a lot about what type of player Diggs was yesterday for your team.
I think that's the next step for Diggs. We know that at times folks have labeled him as a boom or bust corner because while he does have the 11 interceptions, he's given up the most yards for a corner this season with respect to the play against wide receivers. But if he can turn himself into a legitimate shutdown corner, there's not much teams will be able to do with him going forward. I think the examples of him against, McLaurin and a couple other times this year, Diggs has shown the ability that he can be a legitimate shutdown corner. It's just a matter of consistency week in and week out as far as that's concerned. Dallas's 56-point score tied the most points in a single game in team history. The last time the Cowboys scored 56 points in a game was back in 1980 against the San Francisco 49ers. So again, just kind of some of the history and the numbers that the Cowboys made in this game. So as we spin this forward now quickly, Cowboys now prepare for the Arizona Cardinals. The Cowboys are the number 2 seed as it currently stands right now. You mentioned a little bit earlier, this is going to be a statement victory if they can do so. Again, in front of another national televised audience, a 3:30 game. What do you want to see continue to develop from this team based on what you saw on Sunday night that will give you indications that, okay, with a better team coming in, they can do X against the Arizona Cardinals to be able to solidify themselves as legitimate Super Bowl contenders now?
You hope the week goes well for the Cowboys, that they don't have to deal with COVID problems. That's always something. You're going to get Tyron Smith back. What I'm looking for, KG, is this is the first time since Oxnard when they told us it's Smith at left tackle, it's Connor Williams at left guard, it's Broaddus at center, it's Martin at right guard, and it's Collins at right tackle. It's the first time all season we're going to see that configuration play for the Dallas Cowboys. And I'm anxious to see what they could do offensively. Can they maintain the good balance with the run? Can Dak Prescott continue to find receivers? Can guys get open? What receiver is going to step up this week and say, I need the ball? Is it going to be CeeDee Lamb? That's whoever, give Amari Cooper credit. He said, hey, I want the ball, and he made plays. That's what you got to do. So yeah, I am looking forward to this week, the first time all year that all 5 Dallas Cowboys offensive linemen are playing together in a football game. I think that's going to be a very exciting thing for me.
That's wild to think about, that we are about to hit week 17.
Week 17
we're going to see the combination for the first time this season.
They've talked about it. They talked about it like the strength of their team is this offensive line.
Mm-hmm.
And they've waited 17 weeks to finally play with it as a whole unit. And I couldn't be more happier. Hopefully it gives Dak more confidence. Hopefully it gives Kellen Moore more confidence himself, gets the running game established like it needs to. And again, send a statement to the rest of the league. Arizona is going to come in here, and Arizona's a desperate team.
Mm-hmm. They need to win badly. Mm-hmm.
They need to win bad, but you turn around and beat Arizona. You're the 2 seed, and you play like they're the 5. Treat this like a playoff game. Treat this like this is a playoff game, and go out there and win this thing. Send that message, solidify that 2 spot, and then see what happens against the Eagles the next week. Go out there. If you have to win the game to get the 2 seed, go do that. Go eliminate the Eagles. I would be perfectly fine with not seeing a team like them in this tournament.
The Cowboys have a chance to continue to march toward the number 1 seed, maybe get a little bit of help. No thanks to Baker Mayfield. Have to throw that out there. No thanks to Baker Mayfield.
Well, Kevin Stefanski, what the hell is he doing? But this is 2 weeks in a row. This is 2 weeks in a row that, that the Packers were on death's doorstep, knocking on the door, and survived it. Walked through the shadow of the valley of death, if you want to say. But that's what they did, and Kevin Stefanski in the last 2 minutes of that game put the game in Baker Mayfield's hands. And you know what? Kevin Stefanski, Cleveland Browns, you got what you deserved. You wanted to make sure that Baker got that 4th interception. Well, congratulations, you did it.
Yeah, the Packers are a 2-point conversion and a Baker Mayfield non-interception away from having lost their last 2 games to the Ravens and the Browns. But the Cowboys can only control what they can control, and that's winning football games.
Absolutely.
And maybe Kirk Cousins can do us a favor at some point when they take
You never know, man. They beat him before.
You can find Bryan on Twitter at Bryan Broaddus. You can find me on Twitter at Kevin Gray Sports. Again, be sure to subscribe to 105 Through the Fan here on YouTube. And, of course, check out all of our platforms on Twitter, Facebook, and Instagram at 105 Through the Fan. And, of course, 105throughthefan.com. We will be back on Wednesday to get you caught up on the news and notes on America's team. Have an update on Tyron Smith, where he stands as far as his health is concerned, as he looks to come
KG, get ready.
Hey, I'm ready. Cowboys fans are ready to see big number 77 back on the field. So we'll get you caught up on the news and notes on Wednesday as the Cowboys continue their preparations for the Arizona Cardinals. Bryan, as always, appreciate the time and look forward to talking to you on Wednesday.
See you then, KG. Thank you, man.
It's been another episode of the Boys Collective right here on 105 Through the Fan. We'll talk to you Wednesday.